Hello and welcome back to another episode of Activist. I'm Gareth.
And I'm Jackie.
Today we have the incredible Robbie Lockie, co-founder of Plant-Based News.
As you can imagine, we hear a lot of vegan transformation stories, but out of all of them, I think Robbie's has to be one of the most inspiring. It kind of moved me to tears, actually.
If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a like on the video, leave a comment below if you've learned something, and join us as we talk to Robbie about his story and creating plant-based news.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Robbie. It's a real pleasure to have you here. And, the more that we've learned about you, the more that we have quite a lot in common, as it seems, even though we're on opposite sides of the world. So as someone who has a chronic pain condition myself, I was interested to learn that you were also once a sufferer, which first led you to removing animal products from your diet. And a little while ago, I was walking down the street here in Napier in Hawke's Bay in New Zealand, and I was listening to your story of how your vegan journey, your health journey. And as I was walking along, I was actually in tears. So there I was walking through Napier town centre with tears streaming down my face. So I know you've probably spoken about this, many times now, but I think your journey to becoming vegan is such an important and powerful one. There's just of making that connection. Would you mind just sharing it with our viewers as well?
Of course, absolutely. So I think it's like seven and a half years ago. The time goes by so fast, but I was experiencing a lot of chronic pain, as you said, a lot of back pain and aches and skin issues and bloating and just fatigue. And I felt really terrible all the time. And I saw loads of doctors and specialists, and no one really could tell me what was wrong with me. And I decided to sort of take the situation into my own hands, really, and do some research. And around that time, Netflix came onto the scene here in the UK, and we were obviously presented with this wonderful wealth of documentaries and films. And I decided to sort of dive into that world. And I watched Food Inc., Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead by Joe Cross, Forks Over Knives, Vegucated, and I literally just overdosed on plant-based and nutritional documentaries because I really wanted to learn about it. And not only was I sort of quite shocked by how the food system functions, environmentally, and its damage it's doing to our world, but I was also quite amazed and enlightened really about how food actually can change the biochemistry of our body and change how we are and our health and all that kind of stuff. So I decided to sort of learn a bit more, and a friend of mine mentioned and talked to me about this alkaline diet, which since reading about it, there isn't sort of any sort of clear science behind the alkaline diet, but what there is science behind is that increasing the amount of leafy greens and sort of cruciferous vegetables in your diet does improve your artery function. But at the time I was like, alkaline, I need to go alkaline. So I started juicing and eating more greens and decided to try a juice fast, which is not really a fast because you are still consuming nutrients, but I did a 5-day juice fast, I could get confused with 5 or 7 days. It's so long ago now. I think it was 5 days. And every single day I drank about 4 or 5 different juices. I always sort of laugh about when I tell this story because when we went to the supermarket to buy all the fruits and vegetables, I think we bought like 15 pineapples or something. It was just so much fruit, piles and piles and piles of fruit. But we did it, and I felt really, really good. And a lot of my aches and pains started to clear up. My bloating disappeared, and I just generally started to feel much better, even just after 1 week. At the end of that week, we had a friend's birthday party at a local pub, and we went to the pub and we sat down and ordered some food. And I don't know why we did this, but I ordered a beef burger, this big, huge, big pub-like beef burger, which was dripping in fat and all greasy. And I got halfway through and I felt so sick after having 5 days of just juices, all this wonderful nutrients and nourishment in my body. Had a big beef burger and I felt terrible afterwards. And I realized that was kind of when I was falling out of love with meat because it no longer had the same appeal. Yeah. Shortly after that, a friend of mine, another friend, mentioned that there was this incredible documentary called Earthlings that I simply must watch because it really kind of talks about the relationship between animals and humans. And I sat down to watch that documentary, and it really unlocked a realization within me about how our place as a species on this planet has become so innately destructive. And that, in a way, I felt quite ashamed to be human after watching that documentary. It really moved me and made me quite, what's the word? It kind of humbled me, really. It made me just realize that, there's something not right about human beings, really, if we live in such a way. But it was kind of shocking to me as well, because I didn't really understand why I hadn't thought of this stuff before. Because I knew animals were killed, and I knew I knew about our relationship with them. I grew up on a farm. I'd seen animals killed, but I'd never seen it laid out in that way. It never had been explained to me in that way. So if you're questioning whether to watch Earthlings or not, please do watch it. It is a very powerful film that can change your life. Anyway, I think it was on that very day, I was in the house, and I heard a screech and a screaming and shouting outside. So I went outside the front of our house, and we live in a cul-de-sac, which is like a dead end, you could call it, a road. And the cul-de-sac kind of has lots of little houses all around it. And I ran out into the street, and there was a big people carrier with a mum and all her kids in the back. And I went over to her, and she was crying, and the kids were screaming. And I looked back, and I could see this cat on the road, this beautiful big Persian cat that used to live next door. And I went over to her, and she was lying in the road in this huge pool of ruby red blood. And she was flapping around, and she was obviously sustained a huge trauma to the head, and her eyes were shaking. And I sort of looked down at her, and I kind of took hold of her. And as they say, people always tell you that if an animal is suffering, that you should put it out of its misery, you should end its life. I couldn't do it. I really could not do it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. It was one of those moments where I thought, this is not something that I could ever do. And so why am I paying other people to do this for me? All the words and the thoughts and the images of Earthlings were flickering through my mind. And I had this sort of religious, spiritual experience where she was me and I was her. Her blood was my blood. My eyes were her eyes. I think she had green eyes. I've got green eyes. I saw these sort of similarities in her as a creature and me as a creature. And I really sort of, was shaken by it. And, the life slipped from her body in my very hands. And that is when I had the realization that I would become a vegan. I would spread this message to as many people as far and wide as possible, because I thought that people need to know about how precious animals are and how they deserve to live in this world, just like us, free from suffering. And that's pretty much when I resolved to become vegan, as it says on the t-shirt.
Oh, that's awesome. That was one hell of a day. As if Earthlings wasn't enough for you to have to go through that. And one of the best things about recording this series is hearing everybody's stories. We've all got our own journeys, but I think yours has to be one of the most powerful when it comes to connection and just emotions and everything. So thank you for sharing that. And as a brilliant interviewer yourself and a highly successful entrepreneur, we were really nervous about interviewing you, as I said, but it did put us at ease somewhat in learning what a fantastic example of overcoming adversity you are, and that you really can do whatever you put your mind to. I mean, your story is another inspiring tale of how, like myself, I totally get that. You don't have to attend university. You don't have to get a college degree to be successful and have that piece of paper to say that you can do what you've been doing, or to have a job that's also your passion. So, and also like me, while still in your teens, you were put on a plane and sent to the other side of the world, where you were told you would never make it. So I love stories like these. How was it that you made your way in a world where it was supposedly, all set against you?
It's a really good question. I grew up in a little town in the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe in Africa. And it was a very kind of rural town and a very small community. And then I moved to the capital, Harare, in my late teens, and sort of decided to start, a life for myself, and became a little more independent. Rented a room from a friend, and sort of started to live my life a bit more, and sort of try to, be a bit more of an independent human. And then, life in Zimbabwe started to spiral out of control around then. It was 1998, I think it was. And there was riots, people throwing bricks through windows from at our college. There was tear gas from police, from constant unrest. There were food shortages, fuel shortages. It was just, it wasn't really a very nice environment to be growing up in. My parents said to me, well, maybe it's time that we get you out of the country to safety. And I had two choices. I could either go to Cape Town in South Africa, or I could go to London. There was also talk of Edinburgh, but it was either London or Cape Town. But because my grandfather was born in London, I was lucky enough to be able to get an ancestral visa. And I had £200 in my pocket and some clothes and a few CDs and some family photos. And off I was shipped to England. Little country mouse. And I landed in Reading, which is just outside of London, this little city just outside of London, and quickly outgrew it. It felt too small for me, too kind of suburban, and moved into the big city. And I always had a dream of being a big shot graphic designer working in an agency. But people always said to me, you'll never make it. It's too competitive. There's too many people trying to do that, and it's a very popular type of job, and you don't have any qualifications, you haven't been to university. But I was determined to do it, and I taught myself Photoshop and graphic design, and I taught myself all the creative tools, and I kind of applied for jobs in agencies as a junior designer off the back of my portfolio, and I got jobs. And went on to work for some of the biggest companies in the world, namely Jamie Oliver, Getty Images, BMW, and working in agencies where I worked on websites like Waitrose.com, which is a huge supermarket chain here, the Royal Navy, Royal Marines, and loads of really, really great digital platforms. After that, I kind of then got more involved in video and doing more video editing, which in recent years I've learned to really love doing. I find it, I never get tired or bored of editing videos and creating content that tells stories. Ultimately, I think that's what I love more than anything else, is to tell stories and to capture people's imagination through images and music and sound and emotion. And fast forward to today, I'm co-directing a platform that reaches millions of people a month. Through storytelling and through journalism and through writing and through video and motion infographics and the power of social media. So it's been quite a long. Obviously, that's an abridged version, but it's been quite a journey, and I'm very, very proud to be a part of the movement.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. It's such an inspiring story, and it really fills me with hope, because I'm yet another one who's been self-teaching myself and trying to get into this sort of industry, and it's just so wonderful. And when we were doing our research on you, we were just so many different rabbit holes we could go down, because you're just full of wonderful stories. It's absolutely wonderful. But of course, plant-based news is what you're most well known for, and it is a brilliant platform. And one thing I loved learning about was how, for you, it was a case of, setting an intention. You had a passion, you wanted to follow it, not quite sure where to start, but you set that intention, and it's created I believe it's the biggest vegan platform out there today. Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
So the process it all started with Klaus, my good friend Klaus Mitchell. Klaus and I met at an event called Vegan Futures, which was like a TED Talks for vegans. And the process of creation it started as a YouTube channel. And Klaus had this idea that, he was frustrated about the lack of information out there about the plant-based lifestyle, but also the fact that, the foods that we were eating were causing so much harm to people, but they didn't seem to be some kind of counterculture. But he obviously was vegan at the time and kind of aware that there needed to be more information out there. So he set up the YouTube channel. Not long after that, about a year after that, we met, and we just got on really, really well. Klaus helped me move into the house I'm in now, and we became really good friends. And he said, let's collaborate. And I love collaborating. I love working with other people. It's one of the greatest joys in life, to create with others and build things together. And we sort of worked up here in my spare room, and I built the website and took over Instagram and our social media. And we decided to sort of start working on it regularly. And I would work pretty much most evenings on it. And we would just we would just become equally obsessed with trying to share this knowledge and share this information, whether it's videos or graphics or doing live videos. We once did this live video on New Year's Eve where we broadcast the kill counter, which is when it shows you the number of animals killed every minute or every second. We broadcasted live on Facebook, and I think at one time we had like 5,000 people watching, back when Facebook still gave you people, without you having to pay. But we did loads of fun stuff together, and then the process was kind of like really fun because I was getting to do something that I really, really enjoyed, and I really was getting a lot of like pleasure out of telling sharing this information that I was really, really desperate for the world to see and hear. And just out of the blue, we got an email from a guy called Prince Khaled Al Walid, who is a Saudi Arabian prince. He's a vegan prince. Original vegan prince, and he sent us a message and he said, really love what you guys are doing, and I would really love to support you, and not just with money. So I didn't really know who he was. I looked him up, and I was kind of blown away, really, that an entrepreneur and a businessman of his stature had sort of noticed us. So we responded, and we just said, thank you so much for recognizing us and acknowledging our work, and really, really, really appreciate it. And that's it. And he came back and said, didn't even think you'd reply. Was really, really, I'm really touched that you replied. And I'm also equally impressed that you didn't just ask for money. And, that, of course, that for a lot of people is the first thing when an entrepreneur emails you, usually people just think about money. But I wasn't thinking about money. I was just amazed that someone of his level had seen our stuff and was reading our website, looking at our website. And he said, do a proposal. I'd love to support you. Tell me what you need, and we'll go from there. So class and I stayed up all night. We stayed up until like 6 a.m. working, and we did this proposal, and we presented it to him the next day at like 11 or something, or 12. We hadn't slept, big bags under our eyes, and he loved it, and he went on to sort of support the business and become a part of what we're doing. And is now co-owner of Plant-Based News, and because of that, we were able to quit our jobs and focus all our energy on it. It took a while. It took about 8 months. I still had to work on Plant-Based News in the evenings all night, and during the day I was working in agencies as a freelance digital creative director. But it was hard in the beginning. But eventually, when everything went through and the deal went through, we were able to sort of like quit our jobs full time and work full time on PBN. And that allowed us to sort of really like focus all our energy and all our attention, and that just gave it the boost it needed. And we hired a couple of people. Maria, our editor, who writes most of our articles. She is an incredible powerhouse of vegan journalism. She has really, I feel like she's really helped shape the vegan journalist scene. With her style and method of storytelling and journalism. So she's played a huge role in helping us get to where we are. And obviously, since then, we've taken on other people like Giuseppe. Giuseppe is my, I always call him my right-hand man, even though he's left-handed. He's been fundamental to helping me, just stay on top of everything and create a really solid foundation for us to be a brand and a platform that helps support other vegan companies and brands as well. And then obviously, there's lots of other people, which you can see on our About Us page. But yeah, that's where we are, and that's how we got there. And people keep saying, people ask me a lot, how did you get there? And it's really just consistency. There's no secret sauce. We just produce content every single day. We try and stick to a routine, stick to a schedule of content, and try and get as much stories and information out as we can, and to be as clear and as accountable and credible as we can as well, so that people form a certain amount of trust. Because our platform and the size of our platform is like that because of our audience. Our audience obviously trusts us. They value what we say and what we create, and that information is then shared and spread by our audience. So credibility and the trust of our audience is really the not the secret weapon, but it is the reason we are who we are.
Oh wow, it's such an incredible story, and I've got to say, I was telling the founder of FTA, Sarah, about it yesterday, and especially about you getting the email, because I think a lot of us have had the email from the foreign prince at some stage, saying, if you give me your bank details, I'll give you $10,000, and I think hopefully there'll be a lot of our viewers now actually checking their emails properly now.
What have we missed? Yeah.
So it must have been, it must be really daunting to put your faith in a virtual stranger, because for the main part, you never really know who's at the other end of an email. I guess, how was your family and everyone when you just said, hey, I've got this foreign prince wanting to give me money?
Yeah, a lot of people were questioning it. They said, especially being from Saudi Arabia, and Prince Khalid will tell you himself that it's a challenging place to be and a challenging culture to be a part of. It has a lot of there are a lot of issues in that society, in that culture. Things are changing. In fact, his father and him are instrumental in trying to shape and shift the future of that country, because he's part of the royal family, so they do have some influence in trying to shape the world's view of Saudi Arabia. But it is still, there are still a lot of issues there, and that does raise its head, and people do ask questions about that. And ultimately, what we felt is that the money that we received from the organization that he is a part of, his investment fund, we're doing good things with it. We're trying to shift and change the world for the better. Prince Khalid's vision is to see a world where there is no factory farming. That it is, his words are, it needs to be assigned to the dustbin of history. Mm-hmm. That's his phrase, his mention about it. But there was definitely criticism. There was definitely praise. There was definitely excitement. So it was a real mix of things from people.
I love it. I love how, listening to previous interviews, you're obviously quite a spiritual person as well. And it's lovely just how, the whole universe providing, I just love that whole sense of it as well. It's sheer hard work, and it's just all the stars aligning and everything just coming together, and I love that. And one of the things that we love about PBN is, everything that you guys do, you just do so well, and what now, I guess, well, maybe it's been that way all along, but what is the primary aim and the purpose of plant-based news, and has that initial concept changed over the years?
The concept hasn't changed. Our focus and our reason for being is to spread the plant-based message, and to tap into the mainstream. The reason we're not vegan news is because when we first started, veganism or vegan was a lot less palatable as it is now. People were a lot more afraid of it. I think people are more accepting of it now, 3-4 years later. But 4 years ago, I think it was a lot more of a fringe topic. It's now has been thrust firmly into the mainstream. It's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. Restaurants everywhere have a vegan menu of some sort, in most major cities at least. But our kind of primary focus is lifestyle, is to show people how easy, delicious, simple, fun, cool, sexy it can be to be a vegan. That, being vegan isn't about being, some kaftan wearing, croc wearing, hippie hugging trees. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's a stereotype that people have, that we as people are a very particular type of person. But actually, vegans come in all different shapes and sizes. We're Black, we're white, we're Indian, we're Chinese, we're South American, we're Italian, we're Spanish. There's so many different types of vegans with different cultures, especially food cultures that bring diversity and complexity to the conversation. For me, it's about trying to show people that there is an urgency, that life on Earth is finite, it's not infinite, and we have a limited time to change the course of our future. Humanity is on a collision course with oblivion. Our way of living and the way we exist on Earth today is parasitic. We're living in a culture that continuously consumes and kills and takes from Gaia being the Earth. We do not return to the Earth. We do not give back. We only take, and that is what I believe. I believe that humans are currently in a parasitic phase, a bit like the caterpillar eating the leaf, unaware of the fact that by consuming the leaf, they may fall from the tree and ultimately, become squished on the ground. But I do firmly believe that human beings are capable of more than being just caterpillars, more than being just parasites. I think that we have within us the potential to be incredible creators and not destroyers, that our innate humanity is one of beauty and compassion, but the darker side of us is born out of this sort of this selfish society that continuously tells us that we're number one, and that nobody else matters, that competition is the most important thing, and that collaboration is for the weak. We're taught, the weak, what is it from the Cloud Atlas? The weak are meat and the strong must eat. We are, it's an insanity, really. Then we don't realize how connected we are. And it's my favorite book, The Cloud Atlas. And there's another line that goes, "We're bound to others, past and present, and with every crime and each kindness, we birth our future." And, this is something that I want to teach people within plant-based news, is that everything we do, everything that we buy, all the things that we are constantly acquiring, they have a consequence. Someone in some far-flung country made something that you've bought and has potentially been exploited for it, a person or an animal or the land, and that we must learn to be more ethical beings. We must learn to think before we buy or eat or speak or anything like that. So ultimately, that is essentially what plant-based news is about. It's about education. It's about enlightening and raising the consciousness of people and helping them understand that they have the power to change the world, even if it is from their very small corner of the earth.
Oh, wow. Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, plant-based news is doing an absolutely fantastic job in getting that education out there. And you guys put out so much different content, whether it's about the food, the business, the technology, the fashion, simple lifestyle choices. It must be incredible to try and keep up with all that information. You must have such a volume each day. But even more importantly, how do you guys go about, choosing the information that you want to put forward?
That's a good question. Choosing the information comes by often just, an intuition based on how well content does. I personally consume a lot of media on a daily basis, so I'm plugged into, all the social networks, and I'm always absorbing and reading and looking and seeing. And you can tell how well something does by the engagement. So that's the comments, the likes, and the shares. That tells you that people are engaging with a piece of content. They're watching it. A video is a little bit harder because one view on Facebook is just 3 seconds. So if a person scrolls past a video, 1, 2, 3, that's counted as a view. So it's not a true representation of how well a piece of content has done. For me, engagement being comments, likes, and shares, it tells you that a person enjoyed a piece of content, they've shared it, they want their friends or family to see it, they've commented on it, they've invested time in it. So when we see articles that are being engaged with in that way, we know that they are obviously of interest. Then there's obviously stuff of global importance, like what's going on with the climate crisis, talking about the effects animal agriculture is having on the planet and the climate. I think those stories need to be heard, and whether they get engagement or not, I think people need to hear what is going on with our planet and what's going on with animal agriculture. So for me, it isn't always a case of like, is it going to do well? It's like, does it need to be told? That's important. And as far as sort of the knowledge and the information that comes from us, it comes to us. It comes from all sorts of different sources. We're constantly being bombarded with news alerts from Google, or I'm seeing things in Facebook groups, or we're being sent articles by contributors, or people in different countries have said, "Have you seen this?" Or on Instagram, we're sent DM messages on Instagram too, saying, "Hey, have you seen this? Or this is really important. Can you cover this?" It's a real challenge because we're a small team. As I said, we've only got one full-time writer, Maria, and a deputy editor, Liam. So it is a struggle sometimes to keep up with the volume of stuff, and we don't always get to everything, but we do our best. But ultimately, it's about just getting as much information and knowledge out there as possible, and trying to keep the quality as high as possible, which is, again, a challenge when you're trying to write so fast and create so much.
Yeah, I can only imagine what it's like. We know just as everyday individuals, we get bombarded, just on one platform in Facebook alone without everything else. So yeah, I think you guys do an amazing job. And one of the things that we've heard you say is, that another reason why we love PBN is that it was created to counteract the mainstream media narrative, which is hugely important. And you've said in the past that, plant-based news isn't non-biased because obviously it's biased in favor of veganism and whole food plant-based living. However, you do still manage to stay non-judgmental, which is yet another thing that we love about you guys. And how how important is it to maintain that non-judgmental stance and, that journalistic integrity?
It's so important because you never know who's watching and who's listening. We don't make content for vegans. We make content for people. And that's vegans, non-vegans, flexitarians, vegetarians. We need to make sure that the knowledge that people are acquiring or the news that people are reading is stuff that they can relate to, that they can connect with. If everything is about vegan activism on our page, that's like 0.001% of the population of Earth. Most people are not interested in activism. Most people don't want to hear about it. But we can talk about activism in a way that is not threatening. So we can talk about what's going on a farm and how the animals are being exploited, but we don't necessarily have to say activists broke in and, scattered on the ground and did this and did that, and talk all about how the humans came in and attacked, not attack because that's the wrong word, humans came in and exposed this and exposed that. Often I think centering the victims or centering the animals in the stories, that is what taps into more people's consciousness, because everyone cares about animals in some way. Most people are animal lovers. So when we center the animals or the victims of these atrocities, I think it's a more relatable story, and the articles are more relatable without the need to sort of center activism or center the human beings in the stories. It's important to be non-judgmental as well, because I think it's very easy to put people off. It's very easy to alienate people when they feel they're being judged. If we talk about the phrase meat is murder, and I've spoken about this a lot, that us as vegans, we believe that meat is murder because murder by definition is killing a person, and animals are people. They are not humans, but they are people. They have their own identities, they dream, they think, they problem solve, they see the world in color like you do, they speak, they cry, they feel loneliness, they feel anger, they feel fear. They are people just like us, and to kill a person is murder. But the rest of the world doesn't know this, and they don't understand this. Most of humanity sees animals as just sort of autonomous, objects going around on a track. The Victorians, I think, didn't even know that animals were conscious. They didn't believe that they were sentient. And there are still people today that don't see animals as sentient. So we believe that meat is murder. But if you go out there shouting meat is murder to the 99% of the non-vegan world, they don't understand that. It doesn't make sense to them. So you have to speak to people in their own terms. You have to try and help them understand the importance of treating conscious and sentient life as precious. And you have to get in there and sort of work your way in and earn people's trust. That's why it's really, really important to not be judgmental. And when people get it, they get it because they're getting it on their own without you having to force them into coming to that realization. You're not forcing them to understand. And when they get it and they understand it, they usually stick with it. And when people make that connection for the animals, they often don't ever go back. And so I think that's why it's really, really, really important to not be judgmental and to focus on the valuable and positives of being plant-based or being vegan, and lead with that.
That's some brilliant advice. And through this series, we've had the wonderful opportunity to speak to people like the wonderful Claire Mann and like Joey Carbstrong, and then more people who speak about the importance of how we communicate. And so Joey's an advocate for the Socratic Method, which is that whole process of asking people what their beliefs are and how that is so. And when we spoke to Claire, she was saying about the importance of not putting people on that back foot, on that defensive, because it can be like going against a brick wall then. But one thing you spoke about in previous interviews and podcasts is one of the downsides that comes with any sort of group, and that is infighting. And I think all of us, all the audience, will be able to say, I've seen that. It happens in all groups. But hopefully through a series like this, we're hoping to teach people about all the different forms of activism. We can try and teach non-vegans, vegans, activists alike, so then we can all understand each other better. And rather than just sharing criticism without knowing, we can try and work together on it. So how important do you feel it is that we try and stop the bickering and get on with saving the animals?
I think it's so important, while you're arguing with another activist and while you are casting my friend says, nasturtians, aspersions at other people, you're wasting valuable time. For every post you put out on your social media where you're attacking other people, that post could be a post educating people about veganism and animals and the horrific things that animals have to endure at the hands of human beings. Time is limited. We don't have a lot of time on this planet. There are only 52 weekends in a year, and you may only get 80 plus years, in your life. Our lives are finite. They're very, very, very limited. And also they could be taken from us like that. We're living in a pandemic, a horrific virus or disease could take you, could be hit by a bus, God forbid. Anything could happen to you at any time. Do you really want to be remembered for being the person who was causing conflict all the time? That being said, I think when people are behaving in ways that is not acceptable, it is good to speak out. But I think so much conflict can be resolved by picking up the phone and having a conversation with another person. There's tendency to sort of take to social media and tear into other people without talking to them first. If you have a problem with another person, just bite your lip and, reach out to them and say, is it possible to have a call with you? Is it possible to have a conversation with you? Sometimes people don't realize what they're doing. Sometimes people don't realize that their behavior is unacceptable or that they're causing, offense or upset. People sometimes do need a wake-up call, but you don't necessarily need to cause a nuclear explosion, by helping to create change and facilitate change in another person's life. You could just do it very, very, cleverly by having a very direct conversation with that person. Do you know what I mean? So I think, sorry, my cat's just jumped on the table and gave me a fright. I think it is possible to create change and still have those strong words with another person without causing huge amounts of conflict. I think that conflict, it slows us down. It creates unhappiness. It can cause depression. Like with misanthropy, and when people start to sort of hate each other and disagree on a regular basis, it just creates this sort of toxic communication that really, it hampers the growth of our movement. It hampers the spreading of this message. When people come together and when people collaborate and they put their personal differences aside, you can create incredible things. And we have to just keep remembering that you may have some difference of opinions with some fellow activists and campaigners and advocates, but ultimately, if we really want to see change, real change in this world, we have to learn to get along. And sometimes, the best advice is to pick your battles. You don't have to take on another person for every single thing that annoys you. Sometimes it's sometimes better to just pick your battles and ask, is it really worth causing this conflict? Is bringing this issue up, is it really going to create the change that I want? Is it really going to help facilitate a shift in our society? Obviously, there are some very serious things in our society, like sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia. These things do need to be called out. And I think having a quiet conversation with another person about this kind of behavior sometimes doesn't, and a lot of the time doesn't work, because the person, they don't want to talk about it. So you can speak until you're blue in the face. These kind of issues do sometimes need a collection of people to get together and to, in a unified voice, say this behavior is unacceptable. And you're out of the team, or you're out. Racism, sexism, homophobia, or transphobia. I think when we collectively get together and say, no, this behavior is unacceptable, and you cannot be in this team, or you cannot work in our group. This is not right. Sometimes people do come back from these behaviors and apologize, and they realize they were wrong. And I think sometimes people can atone for this stuff. People can change. So it's really nuanced. It's really, really difficult. But I think for the most part, pick your battles. Be careful about going public and attacking people without having a word with them first, especially if they're friends or people you've worked with for a long time. And lead with compassion and lead with that. Lead with that kind of empathetic voice. Try and understand where people are at and try and see if you can relate to them and see why perhaps that they are causing conflict. People sometimes hide their suffering and they project their anger onto others, and it might not always be what it seems from the outside.
Very true. Yeah, definitely. No, that's great advice. And, one of the many reasons that, you know, we love what you do in plant-based news is, you know, it is such a positive environment. You know, it's all about sharing, promoting, inspiring, and getting all the good things that, you know, so many people are doing out there. During this series, we've also spoken to the wonderful Katrina Fox, who told us that her word for the year is collaboration. And, you know, we feel that this is a stance that really we should all be adopting in order to further the movement. And, you know, with vegan businesses being in something like the 1% at the moment, how important is it that we do all support one another?
We must support one another. You know, collaboration is the core of my life philosophy. If you don't collaborate with other people, it's going to take a lot longer for you to get to where you want to go. You know, if we walk together with others, you know, we can support each other, we can help each other. We can nourish and you know, give each other that courage. You know, I always love to remind people that the word encouragement has the word courage in it. It's built in. You know, when you give others encouragement and you support them, you actually give them courage. You know, it may seem cheesy, but it's true. You know, a word of encouragement and support to someone who's struggling and suffering means the world. Never underestimate the power of just picking up the phone to a friend who's struggling and say, "Are you okay? Can I do anything?" Or "How's your business?" Or "How's your mental health? We're living in a pandemic. You've had to get rid of your staff. You know, is there anything I can do to support you?" People need each other. We're tribal creatures. We've existed for most of our history in tribes, in collectives. So this sort of selfish behavior that all this.
Hello.
Hello, Princess.
It's Nala.
It's Princess Nala.
Hello.
She has a tendency to do that, bless her. You know, we need each other. We really do. And you know, when we nourish and support each other, great things happen. And I think, you know, business can be collaborative. You know, there is a tendency in business to want to always compete with each other and always think that, you know, we're trying to destroy each other and get to the top. But I don't want to do that. I would prefer to collaborate with other people. You know, we've got competitors, you could say, people who work in our space who are fiercely competitive with us, and I don't like that. I prefer to work together. I'd love to have big conventions where we all come together and talk about how we achieve, you know, dominate the world news scene by being vegan. You know, come together and support each other. But it's hard. It's hard to sort of, you know, do that sometimes when other people see you as competition. Even in the vegan activist circles, people want to compete with each other in vegan activism. You know, they always want to speak over each other and tell each other how they're doing it wrong. And I just think it's so destructive. You know, we really need to learn to collaborate. We have to collaborate because it's the only way I think our species will survive.
So true. And at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. I mean, yeah.
We do.
Why would we not work together? Just, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, in line with collaborating, during the interview you did with Katrina during her vegan business media podcast, you spoke about the significance of using cross-posting when it comes to Facebook, and that's a tool that I'm just discovering. I've probably said the word about 100 times today. We had a meeting this morning, and as a social media expert or a Facebook expert, especially, can you tell us a little bit about what cross posting is and how we can use it as vegan businesses to help collaborate and, you know, create joint growth?
Absolutely. I think cross-posting is a fantastic function of Facebook pages. You add your partners or people that you work with as cross-posting partnerships. And then when you create a piece of video content, you're able to selectively choose which other organizations or businesses you'd like to share that video content with. When they go into their Facebook Creator Studio and they want to publish a piece of video content, they click on cross-posting videos and they get a selection of all kinds of video content that they can then cross-post natively or organically into their Facebook news feed, and it looks as if it's coming from them. But if you've posted it on your page and it's got 100,000 views, when they post it and share it, it will have 100,000 views. So it will collectively show what's called that social credit to show that that video is popular. And it means that you don't need to freeboot or download other people's videos and re-upload them. You can just simply reach out to them and say, we would love to cross-post content onto our page? Would you be interested in being a cross-posting partner? And most people will say yes, because obviously it helps the growth of their video. Most people say yes, please just don't forget to credit us or link to our page in the caption. And we've got maybe 60 cross-posted partners on our page, and so we cross-post loads of stuff with the boys from Bosch, Green Matters, which is an amazing environmental news platform. Who else? So many different companies and organizations. So it's a really, really great way to work together to further the movement.
Yeah, and everybody's helping each other. So it's brilliant.
Definitely.
Yeah, I love it. And, call us shallow, but we do find ourselves, talking about, the Bosch boys as well. But, vegans, or I don't mind if people are vegan now, or if I find that they've just gone vegan, or if they've been vegan for years. But, I do find myself a bit shallow in that I'm a lot more likely to like and admire and support celebrities that I never had the time of day for before I found out that they were vegan or have gone vegan. And, one such example is Vinnie Jones. I see over in the UK, he, along with Pixie Lott and boxer Nicola Adams, they recently recreated, and very brilliantly so, a vegan milk campaign emulating the pro-dairy ads that they did a decade earlier, which was just brilliant. Vinnie Jones has gone way up in my estimation. How influential do you think celebrities truly are, when it comes to succeeding and inspiring fans and their followers to go vegan?
Hugely influential. Human beings are hardwired to look up to others who are influential. I don't know what it is. I'm not an anthropologist, but I think we're hardwired to aspire to see, greatness in others. There must be some sort of special psychological mechanism built in. I think it's the way we relate to others, the way we see others through our mirror neurons and our ability to empathize with others. When we see someone else doing great things, we see ourselves in them. And I think with celebrity, we see a familiar face. Again, human beings are hardwired to recognize faces. And when we see a recognizable face from a TV show, we've had a positive experience from them. So we look up to them, and they can reach out to and influence millions and millions and millions of people. So when a very high-profile celebrity goes vegan and they start talking about it in a way that is really positive, it's a great thing. Jessie J, I interviewed Jessie J. Jessie and I sat down and talked about her being vegan, and she really spoke in such an eloquent and beautiful way about being vegan, and it was really the way I think most celebrities should be talking about veganism. I think there were issues arise when celebrities talk about veganism as only a diet and nothing else. I think that's problematic for me, because I think veganism isn't a diet; it's a life philosophy, and that it's important that we maintain its meaning. It's the future of our planet, it's the future of our world. We need we need human beings to shift more towards a vegan lifestyle, because the alternative, the carnism, is so destructive and damaging to our species. So I think when celebrities talk about veganism in a way that's on point and correct, I think it has huge power. Obviously, I'm not saying that people should be perfect. People make mistakes. People say things they perhaps shouldn't do. But I think celebrities could be and are hugely influential. So we shouldn't berate them and ridicule them for speaking about veganism, because I think people say that some vegans say that celebrities are talking about veganism just the cool factor, but when I spoke to Jessie, I really felt like she backs it. She's really behind it. It's really an important part of her life, and it's helped improve her health, and she has made the connection with animals. So yeah, it can be great for the movement, I think, if more celebrities spoke out about it.
Thank you for watching this episode. If you would like to support our speaker, then follow the links provided in the description. If you're enjoying this content, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a like on some of our videos, and drop some comments with the things that you've been learning from this series. We really appreciate all your love and support, and we can't wait to bring you the next episode. Thank you.